Today we are wrapping up my reading for the month of February. I know I say this sometimes, guys, but literally by the numbers, this was my best reading month ever. I cannot even. I am just, it was so good. I don't even know what to say about this because it was just a magical time. What a time to be alive. To give you some context, last year, in the calendar year of 2022, I had 5-star reads. In this month, I had 3. And originally I had 4, but as I thought about it, I realized one was more of a 4.5. But for me, 5 is an all-time favorite book. 3 of those. And then I think I had like 6 4.5s, which are best of the year. Last year, I think I had 29 of those. This month, I had 6. Look at the material. Okay, so this is gonna be so much positivity. Mostly we're just gonna focus on these huge hits that I had. I don't think that these should really be too many surprises from what if you've been watching my videos this month, you'll kind of have a sense of what some of these are. But since the HarperCollins strike is over, I don't have to limit myself at all in the things that I'm saying, and I'm just beyond excited. Okay, so let's start with our stats and challenges, and then we'll quickly do disappointments and surprises, and mostly this is just gonna be hits. Okay. Let's do this. In the month of February, I read 26 books. I think that's the other thing is I've read so much in January and February, but some of that's because I have new challenges I've been working on, and some of that is just, I think when you're reading things you're enjoying, it makes you want to read more. Funny how that works. So, read 26 books, 20 of which I owned, 6 of which I did not. On average, I paid $5 for the book, and I paid for 30.77%. I read a total of 8,463 pages, with an average page length or book length of 325 pages, which honestly I would have expected to be more because I read some chonky books, but I also read some very short books. So I guess it balanced out. The average age of book I read was 2 years, which makes sense again because I was doing a lot of like people's favorites of 2022 reading, so those tend to be a little bit more recent. And then the average amount of time a book had been on my TBR was 6 months. Also, Hastings is rubbing the tripod, so take a shot every time I say that. In terms of genre breakdown, a pretty even distribution. A good chunk of these were speculative romances, which makes sense because I did a binge read of a Kindle Unlimited series, which we'll talk about. But then aside from that, if we kind of like normalize by taking that out of the equation, very typical breakdown for me. We had some fantasy, we had some horror, we had some mystery, all the things. Pretty good and typical melange of genre for me. And then rating wise, this is where we get to by the numbers. This was an amazing reading month because now I will say I had 2 notable DNFs that we'll talk about, but I didn't get far enough in them that I counted them in my numbers because I really only do that if I've made like a good chunk of the way in and I decide to rate it on Goodreads. Like if it was enough, I don't know. Anyway, probably don't care about that. Anyway, I technically did have 2 DNFs, which I guess would have brought this down, but they didn't meet the criteria for me including them in this count. So my average rating was 3.88. 3.88. That is so high. Usually I feel good if like anything over 3 is good. Anything around 3.5 is great. So to almost be an average 4-star rating is beyond. Like I am ecstatic. The lowest thing I gave any books were 2.5 stars, which you'll see in my disappointments. And I bet you can guess what project that was associated with. So those are my stats. And then moving into talking about challenges, really I think the only book that I'm not going to talk about in a different category that meets a challenge, and then I guess technically I had some other arcs I read, but I talked about those in my mid-month check-in, so you can see that, is Encore in Death by J.D. Robb. First of all, clap, clap, clap for me for not letting this linger. It came in, I pre-ordered this, and I read it. And I ended up really enjoying this. Like, I stayed up late to finish it, so I feel like for that reason I had to give it a 3.5. I will say I have noticed a pattern, and I don't know if it's just that I've read so many of these at this point, or if dare I say it, getting slightly tired of this formula. How could I be saying that about this? I don't know. I will say that I found the first 40 to 50% incredibly slow, and then like it hit a point where it was like boom, 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 and I was really into it. I didn't love some of the parts of the ending, I will say. But once I got into it, I couldn't put it down. But I have noticed that it's taking often a while to start getting into this. This is not one I would recommend starting with if you've never read an in-depth book, but if you are a reader of the series, I think that this will deliver. And I will also say, I think a cool point of this is that I'm pretty sure she was inspired by The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side by Agatha Christie, because the setup for this is it's a party with a famous Broadway/movie acting couple. The husband is bringing the wife a drink. This happens in the first like 10 pages, so this is not spoilers. The husband brings the wife a drink. Before she gets a chance to sip it, someone's like, oh, sing for us. And so she goes up to do that. While she's singing, he toasts her and he takes a drink. It was poison and he dies, which is a very similar setup to The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side. So I thought that I would be shocked if that wasn't a reference. So if you also are a lover of Agatha Christie and you particularly like that book, this might also appeal to you for that reason. But I thought that this was good, but not her best. And like I said, it did make me briefly worried that I'm a little bit getting tired of the formula. But you know, there's only 2 of these a year and I'm caught up, so I think we're still good. We're still good. Okay. Anyway, so the reason I'm bringing this up is that this is it was in my series TBR for the next 6 months, but it's also part of my Reading Roberts challenge. I always hope to read 2 Roberts a month. That's my goal for the year. So I didn't do that, but considering I read 6 last month. So, you know, it all balances out. We're still ahead for the year. Oh, actually, sorry, jumping in before I finished filming, but I just remembered. I also felt like I should tell you guys I'm bailing on my George Orwell reading project. Not because it's horrible, it's just so many of them are book reviews and I just don't think I want to read the whole thing. So I'm sorry. I did create a Discord thread for it, so if there's any of you guys who want to read it and want people to talk about that book with, go over there. I do think I'll probably look up some of his like best essays and read those still, but I'm bailing on my completionist project there. So yeah, sorry about it. This is why I need to stop telling you guys or committing to year-long reads, because this is the second time it's bitten me in the ass. Do you guys remember the Dorothy Sayers, Peter Wimsey debacle of, what was that, 2020, 2021? Yeah. I just need to stop committing to long read-alongs before I know if I'm gonna be into all the books. Okay, anyway, that's all my challenges. So now let's get into disappointments and surprises and then hits. So disappointment-wise, I'm not gonna spend a ton of time talking about these because I want to just get to the positivity. I will say my 2.5 stars were both for the Goodreads reading challenge that I did, which I had so much fun doing with people, but the reading project itself was pretty dispiriting. Hence why I then spent the rest of the month reading people's favorite books of the year to like palate cleanse it, which was the best decision I've made in a while. See that video for full thoughts because I feel like I've kind of beat this horse to death. But these are both 2 stars and I find them both very disappointing. And now that we've talked about this, I can finally unhaul them. Okay, and then the other 2 DNFs that, like I said, I did not get far enough in these that I even put them on a spreadsheet, but I did want to mention them as disappointments because I was genuinely really looking forward to both of these and I DNF'd them both. So my unwrapped book was The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. This is not a bad book at all, at all, at all. It is very well written and constructed. Honey, where's the romance? Like, I was sold this as having a romantic element. On the back, it's talking about Tom. I don't even know if I've met Tom by the time I DNF this at like 90 pages. So what? Like, honey, where's the romance? If you're gonna sell me that this is a romance, you have to have more tension. In a 330-page book, if we've hit page 90 and I'm not even totally sure who the love interest is yet, no. So, very well written if you were looking for like what I think is gonna be like a woman finding herself story in the context of very twisted, like complicated family dynamics. That's lighthearted and it's set at a bookstore. I totally get why other people like this. I came for a romance and I call bullshit on that. Like, where is it? So that's why I DNF this one, but I would recommend this to other people if They're not just looking for a romance. The other one is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. Look, I'm gonna be real with you. I got to page like 40 and I was like, do I understand anything that's happening? And the answer was no. And I was like, do I want to spend the time to go back and reread this and make this a very like focused read, like a very detailed focused read? And the answer was no, so that's why I'm DNFing it. It is too smart for me, or at least smarter than I'm willing to put the brain cells in to really like understand it. So for people who love this, I just want you to know that I respect you more because you're focused and able to I don't know what this is about. And I didn't know after 40 pages, and that's why I was like, you know what? My brain is just not in a place to read this. So, you know what though? I tried something a little out of my comfort zone, so I don't regret that. I got this from my favorite local bookstore, so, you know, I'm glad to have given them some patronage. But no. I'm not gonna be finishing this because I'm not gonna say I'm not smart enough, because I feel like that's putting myself down. I just think this wasn't the kind of read that I was hoping to get from this, and therefore I'm gonna DNF and move along. So there you go. Then, surprises. So we'll give you, I'm already into books that I just am so excited to talk to you guys about, so I'm so excited. Okay, Lone Women by Victor LaValle. This was my first Victor LaValle, and it was also a buddy read, and I had the best time buddy reading this. We had a really good conversation in our Voxer chat. So it was me and Joss from Yogi with a Book, and Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany. We had the best conversation. This book is so not what I thought it was gonna be, or like it goes a place I wasn't expecting it to go. How about that? And I can't tell you what that is because it would be spoilers, but I'll give you the setup and I'll give you the note before I give you the setup, just that the plot beats and the timing of them never came when I was expecting. So like some of the things that happen in this book, I would have guessed would happen at some point, but he would have them happen so much earlier than I was guessing. And then it like took a turn in terms of kind of the type of book it was. So good. So basically the setup is we open on our main character and she is burning down her house with her parents' dead bodies in them and getting the hell out of town. I think this happens in like the early 19 teens in the West. So she's in Southern California because there's a bunch of Black homesteaders there and her family has been a part of that movement. And so she is hauling ass to Montana with this giant trunk that we don't know what's in it, but it's heavy AF and she's got to take it with her. So she gets up there and she's got to try to homestead, and she's a Black woman and she's by herself, so there's like complications there. And then we eventually meet a bunch of other lone women because Montana is the only territory where women can homestead by themselves. And so like we're encountering their stories. This book is so interesting, it's very audacious, and it is so thematically rich. Like there is so many layers to this about religion and race and gender and social conformity and sexuality, like all the things this book hits, and it does it in such a weird way that was great. I had a couple of pacing issues, which is why I gave it a 4 instead of a 4.5, but I will tell you that this is a very, very strong 4-star. It is a Book of the Month Club pick in March, and I ordered a physical copy because I wanted to have it and because I really want this book to do well. I think that it is got a lot of mass appeal. It's very page-turnery, and I'm hoping this is his like big novel because it was great. I've already bought another one from him that I'm gonna read. Can't wait to read more from Victor LaValle. So that was a delightful surprise. Okay, so the other big delightful surprise was Artek by Honey Phillips. And I read the whole series. I binged the entire 7 Brides for 7 Alien Brothers series from her. And Artek I gave 4.5 stars to. Somehow I don't, like, it's not the kind of book that would normally get that from me. But as I was reading it, I was just so happy. I was like, this is exactly what I want from an alien speculative romance. We've got a marriage of convenience. We've got weird-ish peen situation, but not like so weird. So like there's a little bit of like, ooh, I just, if you're gonna have an alien, let's just go for it. Don't give them, you know, boring, same what we can get here on Earth. Like that's half the fun, you know? Like embrace the camp, embrace the weird. It was like a sweet dynamic between them. It had a really good setup for the rest of the series. And I will say, the rest of the series has been pretty consistently 4 stars for me. I would say my favorites, aside from Artek, are Drakkar, even though it reminds me of Drakkar Noir, and Frantor, because they're like, we think we're too broken to love. But it's like, because they're aliens from an alien war, and not because they're just like assholes. So anyway, I just love that whole series, but I gave Artek 4.5 because I was like, yeah, this is like what I want from this kind of book. And I think after that, because my expectation had been set pretty high, they haven't been like as good to me, just because I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what the series is doing. But that first one just had that real punch of like, yes, thank you, Honey Phillips, for it's like the right length. It's like 150 pages. It's not too long. We've got interesting side characters. It's an interesting world. We've had a bunch of different, like all of them they're not actually biological brothers. They all were in this war together and like are homesteading this sort of like Western alien planet town. And so like we have different species with each of them. Like one of them can fly, and one of them seems to be like a plant man, and one of them is kind of like a werewolf. Like, you know, it's just a bunch of different aliens, and they're mostly marriage of convenience with a snowed in kind of trope happening, and there's like a little bit of macro plot. Anyway, just the balance really worked for me, and it surprised me how much I've loved that series. And Artek is my favorite so far, because it just really hit me right what I want from that kind of book. So surprise, and my first 4.5 star that we're going to talk about, and the rest of this video is all 4.5 and 5 stars. So just get settle in. I'm so excited that I get to just be happy about books. Okay, so the first one, let's go with the other one that I don't have in physical form because it is not yet out, and I cannot wait for you guys to read this. A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. Who's surprised to see a T. Kingfisher here? No one. She's very rapidly becoming an all-time favorite author. Her books just work for me tonally, thematically, plot-wise, and this one even includes creepy plants, which if you know me, you know that I cannot deal with like fungus horror, and the fact that I can deal with sort of like plant horror says something about her. Anyway, the setup here is our main character is in between jobs, I want to say. For some reason she's come home and her mom is living in her grandmother's old house, and the house seems to be influencing her mother. Her mother is very like progressive and kind of like kooky, quirky, and very different from the grandma, who was very like buttoned up and strict and had a very specific point of view on the world and like is kind of a tyrant. And her mom has like reverted the house back to be exactly like the way her grandma had it. And she seems to like not like to be saying things that are not in character for her, and like becoming like really like regressive in her social attitudes. Our main character cannot figure out what's going on. Well, it's a haunted house story, so like things progress from there. I love this because I felt like the horror elements worked for me. They were horror and horrifying, but they weren't so over the top that I can't deal with it. Like it didn't, I don't know. I'm not like a hardcore horror person where it's like, oh God, like I feel like some of the things that happen in horror, I'm like, this feels like a punishment to read. So it's not that over the top, but it is horrifying for sure. But what I really loved about this is that it's basically metaphorically about, and this is set in the American South, it's about like progressive millennials watching their parents succumb to the alt-right news pipeline and becoming seemingly different people and brainwashed. The number of people I know who are like, my mom used to be totally normal and now she's a homophobic, raging racist, and like the only thing that's changed is what people post on Facebook and her starting to watch whatever. So I felt like that metaphorically was what this book was about, and I was like, oh my God, relatable. And I thought that was really well executed. There's an interesting incorporation of like vultures/buzzards that I thought was interesting. There's like a communal aspect, and the ultimate progression is so camp but still horror. Which is what I like. I think I'm gonna have to update my likes to camp. And you guys already know this. I'm sure I kind of have known this, but I think I just need to fully embrace it. I just like campy things. I like it if it's darkly campy. I like if it's intentional camp. I like if it's unintentional camp. I'm here for it. This is intentional dark camp and so good. I can't wait for people to read this. I think it comes out at the end of March, so look for that one. God bless T. Kingfisher. What a queen. Okay, other 4.5 that we can talk about. Okay, I gave Sea of Tranquility 4.5 stars. Who's surprised? No one, because everybody loves this book, and now I am one of those people who love this book. This is my first Emily St. John Mandel book, and will not be my last. I think what's really compelling to me about her work is that it is both literary and page turner, which I think is a very difficult line to walk. I really love the incorporation of sci-fi into this. Like, this is how you do literary sci-fi right. It reminds me a lot of Ted Chiang's writing. So that's maybe a comp of kind of the vibe or the tone, which is, it's really well written. It's really thought-provoking and thematically firing on all engines, but it's clear and it's interesting still. Like, it's very entertaining. So basically the setup is we have these different timelines. Some of them are, I think the earliest one is in like 1912 upper BC. The latest one is at 2400 somewhere or other, and all of them have converged to this one thing that they have in common. I don't think it's spoilers really if you know that it's sci-fi and we're talking about that there's some kind of dual timeline, time travel-y kind of ness with this. So I just think that this handles that better than most sci-fi that I've seen. I thought that it's just very moving, this book, as well as being extremely entertaining. So I will definitely read more from this author, and I'm really glad that seeing it everywhere and then seeing it on Mari's list really, it pushed me to go ahead and pick this up. And I'm really glad that I did because I really enjoyed it. Okay, getting back into things. Sorry, I'm filming this on my lunch break and I had to eat some lunch. Okay, we're still in 4.5 star territory. The last one that I'm going to mention before I move to the 5 stars, because 2 of the 4.5s go with a 5 star. If you know, you know. But I'm going to talk about Out There by Kate Folk. This is one that I had recommended to me last year by a few of you guys. I think I'd seen it on the Bookish internet a little bit. And then this is another one that I read because of My Name is Marines. So we just did Sea of Tranquility. Here's the other one I read because of her. Both of the ones I read because of her I gave 4.5 stars to. So really this is just a reminder that I need to just always be reading her recommendations. This was so weird and delightful. There's a lot of just, I don't know, like you kind of just have to experience it. It's a short story collection that I think is very thematically linked without being repetitious in its themes. So it's a lot of like, I would describe it as feminism via Black Mirror dystopia. And there's, you know, there's one story about people who have a disease where their bones melt at night and then re-solidify every morning. There's one about literally the last woman left on Earth and how she has a talk show that all of the men watch to just watch a woman. There's these recurring theme of the blots, which are like automatons on dating apps. I don't know. There's just a lot of kooky ideas. Oh, there was one I loved about this woman whose boyfriend is having insomnia and all the things that he's bringing to the bed every night. Yeah, it's weird. There are some clunkers in here, but I think it's because she was taking a risk, and I respect that. Normally, like, I started off at a 4 star for this, but I kept thinking about it, and it's just so delightfully and wonderfully weird that I feel like it has to be a 4.5. This is one of my favorite things I've read this year, I think. So yeah, if any of that sounds appealing, I think this is definitely worth checking out. She is definitely an author I would read more from. Her imagination, I am into. I am digging. I really would like to see a full novel, I think, from her. Yeah, because I could see it being very out there, if you will. So, 4.5 stars to this, really enjoy. Let's move to the 5 stars. There are 3 of them because this is such a good reading month. Okay, first of all, continuing, the next 2 are also from my reading other Booktubers favorites of the year vlog that I did. And this one is from Angela at Literature Science Alliance. I read The Last just hit myself in the face. I read The Last Quintista by Donna Barba Iguera on her recommendation. This is what I would describe as literary middle grade sci-fi, and this is so devastating. This book destroyed me. I started crying at the beginning, and there were tears throughout. It's about the nature of life and death, about the nature of storytelling, of family and generational traditions, what you will do for those you love, politics and like how politics corrupt people. There's so much going on in this. I also think that this could be a beautiful story for immigrant children who have to leave their families behind to go to a new country. I think that it's so beautiful, guys. The beginning of this, I was crying. She's saying good. So I should tell you the setup. Basically, there's a comet that's heading towards Earth. It's going to destroy Earth. Our protagonist, her parents are both doctors of geology and botany. And so they have been selected along with her and her little brother to be in the spaceships that are leaving Earth before it's destroyed to go to this new planet and colonize it. She's saying goodbye to her grandma and it just kills me. It reminds me of the beginning of Up in terms of just like, oh my God, I just met you and I'm already destroyed by this story. Like just the opening, 50 pages could have been a short story and it would have been 5 stars. This whole book is so beautifully observed. It's thematically rich. It's emotionally devastating. It's interesting from the sci-fi element. And the reason I had to give it 5 stars is because, I think that this is one of the best middle grade books I've ever read. It's so good. There's no surprise to me why it won a Newbery, though I don't maybe be careful which children you give this to because it's so much. This is beautiful, beautifully written, beautifully executed, and a wonderful, wonderful book that more people should read. And I'm really glad Angela pushed me to pick it up because I would not have picked this up without her recommendation. So good. Another one, the theme for this month, I feel like, is wistful existentialism. Because my next 5-star, Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister, is also so much about the nature of time and the nature of spending time with those you love and the fleeting nature of time with those you love. But it's also a thriller and a really well done mystery. So it's all in one. It's a 5 stars. It's one of my all-time faves of this kind of book. It's a mystery with a strong speculative element. So our main character's son, in the first chapter of this book, which is one evening, her son's been acting kind of strange. So she's talking with her husband about that. She's watching him walk towards her. And as her son is walking towards her, this man appears and approaches the son, and the son stabs and kills the man in front of her. And she goes to bed that night after him being taken to the police station, just absolutely devastated. And when she wakes up, it's the day before when all of that happened. And she can't figure out why she has gone back in time. And every day when she's waking up, it's the day before. Sometimes it's more time. And what she comes to realize is that she thinks she is supposed to be stopping her son from doing what he does. She's trying to figure out why he was trying to kill this random man, what's going on. And it's a beautiful story about family and the relationship with her husband and the relationship with her son and how you can never appreciate these little moments with your family when they're happening. You can only appreciate them in retrospect when you've lived a life, and life is composed of all those little moments with your family and your friends and your loved ones. And it's so good. It made me cry. Take a shot every time I say it made me cry in these 5 stars, because that seems to be a key thing in a 5 star is making me weep. And it made me cry. Her dad has passed away at the beginning of the book, but when she goes back in time, she's seeing him again. And it's all just amazing. So I highly recommend this. And I'm so glad that Meg loved this and pushed me to pick it up, because I would not have picked it up without her recommendation. And it's so good. Yay! Okay. Now to the coup de grace, the grand finale of this 5-star love fest. It's time to talk about Realm of the Elderlings, because we've come to the end of my Realm of the Elderlings journey, and they're all so good. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to even talk about these, because these are the last 3 books in a 16-book long series, the last trilogy in that series. So what do I even say about them? Okay, let's gather my thoughts here. So maybe the first thing that I should say, well, first of all, let me give you my ratings. The first book I gave a 5-star to, and is in contention as my favorite book in the entire series. It's either this or The Mad Ship, and I'm not sure which one. The other 2, I waffled between a 4.5 and a 5, and I think I have enough little things that I'm I don't know about that I don't think they're quite there. But this is far and away her most consistent series within the Realm of the Elderlings. This is quality-wise the best one, I think. The first question I want to ask or answer for you is, could you start with this series within Realm of the Elderlings? And I think you could, but don't. Because What made this series so amazing is exactly that existential wistfulness, because we are following Fitz, we're following Fitz Chivalry Farseer, aka Tom Badgerlock, aka whatever names he goes by. And we have followed him his entire life. Guys, we've been following him his entire life. We started when he was a little boy in the first trilogy. We kind of check in with him in kind of like middle age in the Tawny Man, there you go, the Tawny Man trilogy. And then this is the Fitz and the Fool series, and this is like him in his golden years. And the existential wistfulness and beauty of seeing these characters who we have followed for so many books throughout such a long span of their lives. We've seen characters we love die. We've seen in battle or whatever, but also like from old age. And we've seen characters we love be born and enter the scene. And we've seen relationships evolve and change over time. We've seen so much growth from these characters, and yet so much consistently, like Fitz, he's still gonna be a dum-dum in this because like he can't help it. He can never get out of his own way. We see Kettricken being amazing. We see Shade being shady. We see the Fool having his own long game, having their own long game. So it's like we have the consistency, but we also have growth, and you will not get any of that if you just start with this series. I now understand why people say as soon as you finish this, you're gonna want to go back to the beginning and start a reread, because I do. Because now that I fully understand their trajectory, I want to go back and reread at some point. And maybe I'm sure I will not have to twist her arm to do this. Maybe me and Leanna should host a reread or like a read along at some point to like read all 16 of them in a year or something. Because now that I've read them once, I think I could read them a lot quicker. A side note, I was only supposed to read Fool's Assassin this month, and it leaves off on such a cliffhanger. I kept going, and this felt like the first time I've really gotten fully in the flow with a Robin Hobb to make it so that they feel like page turners. And I will admit, I didn't read these as closely as I read some of the other books because I was just so caught up in wanting to know what happened. I love this as a binge reading experience. I read all 3 of these chunky books in the course of about like 2 weeks, and that was an amazing experience. Poor Leanna, I accidentally she started it. She read this before she was supposed to, so I was trying to catch up with her, and then I got ahead, and then I stayed ahead, and I finished them all. But I just could not put these down. The ending of this for Fitz and the Fool is just so good. And I think that there's just so many things I love about this. Hopefully I'm not giving like spoilers, but like the new things that are amazing in this, like there's a new character. If you've read this series, I loved that, and getting that new perspective was great and a risk, I feel like. I love where that character leaves off. I think that and I think if Robin Hobb ever graced us with more books, there's definitely a way that could happen. So I am just saying, Robin, putting it out there, we would love it. I love how all of the characters from the live ship traders side of the house of these stories comes back in, and like we have some baddies from that series coming over in ways that were exciting. Some of my favorite characters from that series come back over, and I hope this puts, especially people who shit on Rainwild Chronicles series, hopefully this helps you understand why that was like both necessary, but also that series is great, and I won't hear blasphemy against it. So anyway, I feel like I'm just rambling, but anyway, if you want like full spoilery thoughts about this, at some point me and Leanna will do a live show over on her channel. I also have, I don't know if it'll be full spoilers, but I want to do a live stream about the entire Realm of the Elderlings series with Leanna, and I have a couple of other people I'm hoping will come as well. I'll see if they'll be willing to join, and I kind of want to do like a ranking thing for a live stream, so look out for that. But anyway, I'm rambling. All that to say, far and away the best thing I read this month. What a journey. What a journey, and what a rich, rewarding journey. Robin Hobb is the best fantasy writer I've ever encountered officially. Like the series, I already was saying that, but the series absolutely cemented it. And it's hard for me to tell you, like, well, go back to the beginning of the 16 long series and just read it because it's worth it. I do feel that way. If you just want a standalone Robin Hobb experience, I would recommend the Live Ship Trader series. I know some people don't agree with that, but I would recommend that series because I think that's probably the most relatable or like similar series to other popular fantasy series. That's probably the one I would recommend people if they just want to try her as a standalone. I would love it if you would try the Farseer trilogy. That doesn't end up jiving for everyone, but just know the ending, like, here's, what can I tell you? Again, I don't want to give you guys spoilers. There's a cliffhanger in that first trilogy that is one of the best cliffhangers ever until you get to this series, which I think it's even better. So there's that in that series. So there's definitely a lot of richness in that original trilogy, even though I would tell you, as of right now, it's my least favorite trilogy in the series. I know, controversy. But yeah, you could read that as a standalone if you really wanted to, or if you just want to try and don't want to commit to the full 16 books, you can start with Assassin's Apprentice and do that. But don't do that. Read them all. That's really what I want to tell people. I'm like, just read them all. If you want to just try sampling, try the short story that she has, which is the, what is it? The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. That sounds right. You could do that. So you could also do that if you just want a sampling of her writing, but this is one of the best reading experiences I've ever had. I absolutely love this trilogy. I will never emotionally recover from it. I wept. Yeah, take a shot. I wept so many times in this, and okay, thanks, bye. I guess that's all. I mean, I could just sit here and ramble, but I feel like I truly am just rambling. So anyway, all that to say, this month was amazing, and I'm a little nervous going forward because I feel like it's always hard when you have that high of a high to then come back down to earth, and I'm a little worried I'm gonna get into a slump, but I've got a couple of really exciting reading projects that I think will help give me some momentum to keep me going. So that is my intent. Anyway, I hope you guys had an absolutely great reading month. I clearly did. Even if you didn't, I hope that you are surviving minimally and thriving maximally just in life in general. Let me know what you thought about any of the books I talked about. Let me know maybe what some of your favorite reads you've had recently are. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon.